Latest now, let's go to our newsmaker line. Joining us live from Israel is Josh Hasten, who works for JNS, the Jewish News Service, longtime correspondent for them. Josh, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Tell me, Josh, so the latest we're hearing is that maybe this ceasefire deal is off the table or over. I know Israel has stopped letting humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip as of yesterday. Tell us the latest.
So first of all, I just have to update you. There was a terrorist attack about 2 hours ago in northern Israel in the coastal town of Haifa. One Israeli was murdered by an Arab terrorist and 4 others were wounded. This happened at the central bus station in Haifa. So that just is breaking news right now. Your listeners need to know that. So regardless of a ceasefire, no ceasefire, Hamas and their affiliates, the terrorist organizations, are determined to murder as many Israelis as possible. So that's going on right now here in Israel. That's breaking news.
Did they catch the person that carried that out?
Yeah, the terrorist, from what I understand, was in fact neutralized, was shot and killed at the scene of the attack. He came out with a knife and started stabbing Israelis there at the crowded central bus station, and a 70-year-old man succumbed to his wounds. 4 other Israelis were wounded in that attack, several in moderate to serious condition. So that just happened this morning at the busy rush hour in northern Israel.
Do you think that
is a terrible way to start the day?
It sure is. Do you think that is a direct result of all these Palestinian prisoners being freed by Israel in return for the hostages from Gaza?
No, I would say it's a direct result of the incitement being carried out by Hamas and the terrorist organizations. You had Hamas's so-called Jerusalem minister just the other day encourage Muslims to go out now that you're in the holy month of Ramadan, which is supposed to be a month of peace and reflection. Encourage them to go out and to kill as many Israelis, as many Jews as possible. So you have incitement going out, being carried out on a daily basis. It's a direct result of what's being taught in the education system, what's being spewed in the media and being taught by these religious leaders. I think it's a direct result of that. So unfortunately, that's the case there.
Well, tell me,
as you said.
Tell me about this. Tell me about this ceasefire deal. Is it off this morning, or is there just some movement one way or another, back and forth?
So what you have right now is you have Prime Minister Netanyahu coming out and saying we're suspending all humanitarian aid down into Gaza. And I think you ask me, this is exactly what Israel should have done on October the 8th, after the massacre on October 7th. I'm not exactly sure why you have a situation, I don't know, in any other country in the world that would send in humanitarian aid to an enemy's so-called civilian population, because let's remember, you have 80% of those so-called civilians who supported what happened on October the 7th. So you have Hamas time and time again in violation of the ceasefires. You had last week Shiri Bibas, who was murdered along with her 2 small children, brutally murdered by Hamas. And they returned the wrong body. They didn't return the body of Shiri Bibas. They've been in violation time and time again. What does Hamas want? Hamas wants to stay in power. The day after the war, they want to remain in power in Gaza. And that is why they're rejecting any future ceasefire, an extension of the ceasefire as proposed by Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of the United States of the Trump administration. They're rejecting Trump's plan of relocating the Gazans to a safe place outside of Gaza. They want their own people there as human shields, as pawns in the fight against Israel. They want Israeli troops out of Gaza. They want Israeli troops out of the Philadelphia corridor, that strategic corridor between Gaza and Egypt, so they can continue smuggling weapons. They want to remain in power. Phase 2 of the ceasefire is not automatic. It has to be negotiated. Hamas wants to skip that stage so they can maintain their stranglehold over Gaza, over its population. That's where we are right now. And Israel has said enough is enough. So that is why they are stopping the humanitarian aid this morning into Gaza.
Is the next step putting the military back into Gaza, the Israeli military, or no?
That's the way it's headed right now. It looks like that. I mean, Israel's troops are ready. They're preparing. Report over the weekend indicating that, yes, Israel is in fact preparing to go into Gaza full force. And now that we have a friendly administration in Washington, reports over the weekend also indicating that the Trump administration is fast-tracking the supply of weapons to Israel, which were held up under the Biden administration. So right now, today, this morning, all signs indicate that the war will, in fact, resume in Gaza. A lot of things can happen. A lot of things can change. This is the Middle East. Middle East, rather. Things can fluctuate. But right now, this morning, it looks like Israel is, in fact, going to go back into Gaza, finish off Hamas once and for all. And that is one of the three major goals of Israel, as stated after the October 7th massacre. Number one, of course, we want our hostages back. It is believed that there are 24 or so hostages, live hostages, remaining in Gaza, Israelis who were kidnapped on October the 7th. You still have Israeli hostages, the bodies of hostages, unfortunately, being held by Hamas in Gaza. Number two, Hamas must go. They cannot rule the day after the war. And number three, Gaza can no longer be a threat. Those are the three goals of the war. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, time and time again, he insists that all three goals must be met. So that is the look of things now. That's the way things are headed at this juncture.
Talking with Josh Hasten, who is from the JNS Jewish News Service, jns.org. You can see his writing there. So what does this mean for the hostages that are alive in Gaza? If Israel begins the fight again militarily in Gaza, I imagine those hostages would be in danger. Well, they're already in danger now, but maybe more danger for their lives if that takes place, no?
Listen, I as I said before, I would hope that the more pressure we put on Hamas, the more of a chance that we are going to get them back. Unfortunately, it's been 500 days since Hamas brutally kidnapped over 250 Israelis. There have been successful rescue operations. Unfortunately, too few of those operations have taken place. But at this juncture, I think from the beginning, Israel should have withheld all humanitarian aid. There's also talk this morning that maybe Israel will cut off the electricity, will cut off the fuel supply. I believe that more and more pressure that is put on Hamas at this stage, the more and more chance Hamas will say, enough already, let's just give back the hostages once and for all. Let's end this once and for all. I think that's where we are right now. If, in fact, we're not headed to future negotiations, if there aren't any future exchanges, hostages for prisoners, which is the way things were headed until now, then that might be the only strategy, the only path towards getting the hostages back, perhaps, is to put more and more pressure on Hamas.
Are those talks in Egypt off? I know that all sides were headed to Cairo for conversations about what Phase 2 would look like. Are those done, or are those off?
The last I heard the other day is that Israel did have people on the ground in Egypt, and the Prime Minister recalled the team that was there in Egypt. So from the last I heard, and things change all the time, people go back and forth, it's not that long of a flight down to Egypt. But the last I heard from a day or two ago is that the team was recalled, and the talks are not happening right now. So Phase 1, from the last I understand, is Phase 1 is officially over. Hamas has said that they will not agree to extend, per Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoys, they will not extend Phase 1 of the ceasefire. Their goal is, again, Phase 2. Basically, they're saying they want the war to end and they want to stay in power. They want to maintain their stranglehold over Gaza, over the people in Gaza. They want to keep them there as human shields. They want to maintain their control over Gaza, which is absolutely unacceptable. They're a danger. They're a menace to Israeli society. They're a menace to their own society. And they're a menace to the Western world. What starts here in Israel, what starts in Gaza, spreads to the Western world. We saw that on 9/11. So this is not just a problem for Israel or for Gaza or the Middle East. It's a problem for the entire Western world. Something very important to remember.
Correspondent Josh Hasten in Israel. You can check out all of his work. Head over to jns.org. Josh, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Have a great day. Thank you.